I stood by the floor-to-ceiling window of my penthouse office in downtown Chicago, watching the city's lights shimmer against the twilight sky. 48 stories below, employees trickled out for the evening, including my father, stepmother, and half-brother, unaware that they worked for me. 7 years ago, they had thrown me out of our house, branding me a failure and a burden. Now, they drew paychecks from Titan Innovations, the tech giant I built from nothing, and they still had no idea I was its founder and CEO. "Miss Adams?" My assistant Claire's voice chimed over the intercom. "Everything's confirmed for tomorrow's town hall. Are you sure you want to go through with this?" I smiled faintly, fingertips brushing the cool glass. "Yes," I said. "It's time." The memory of that night was still razor sharp. I was just 19, fresh out of a small Midwestern college with a degree in software engineering, not the business finance degree my father had demanded. "You'll never survive without a real career," he had barked at me across the kitchen. "Nobody gets rich writing code in a basement." Meanwhile, my half-brother Ryan was the family's golden boy, already clerking for a prestigious investment firm, already boasting about his future MBA. When I refused to take the entry-level bank job my father had secured for me, he erupted. "If you're too proud for our help, get out." I had exactly 30 minutes to pack. My stepmother, Lydia, watched from the hallway, cold and silent. "This is for the best, Rachel," she said flatly. "Maybe a little failure will teach you humility." Ryan had just laughed as he held the door open. I left that night with a battered laptop, $150, 0 cents in cash, and a dream. The first startup I joined was brilliant on tech, disastrous on leadership. When it collapsed 6 months later, I made my move. I pitched investors on a plan, salvaged the tech, rebuild the team, run the company right. They were hesitant. I was young, unpolished, and completely unknown, but my vision was clear, and my coding skills undeniable. They took a gamble on me. By 22, Titan Innovations was thriving, and now, at 26, it's one of the biggest rising stars in the Midwest tech scene. I kept my ownership hidden behind shell companies and let our charismatic COO become the public figure. But tomorrow, at the annual meeting, the veil would lift. Tomorrow, my family would finally realize whose empire they had spent the last 3 years working for. And this time, I wouldn't be the one walking away. 3 years ago, Titan Innovations quietly bought the Riverfront Tower, the same downtown Chicago building where my father's law firm was barely clinging to life. Instead of evicting them, I had HR offer them jobs under new titles. My father, once a senior partner, became our in-house legal advisor. My stepmother, Lydia, took a position as administrative coordinator. And Ryan Mockler, the golden child whose career had hit unexpected turbulence, accepted a junior compliance role. Sometimes, late at night, I would watch the building's security feed from my penthouse office. My father, a little more stooped now, rushing through the lobby, coffee in hand. Lydia, orchestrating office potlucks like promotions depended on them. Ryan, whose tailored suits didn't hide the anxiety in his eyes, trying so hard to be noticed. They loved working here. Through whispers from mutual acquaintances, people who didn't know they were feeding information back to me, I heard everything. "My new company actually values hard work," my father would boast at barbecues I was never invited to. "At Titan, talent doesn't go unnoticed," Lydia would chime in proudly. If only they knew. The CEO they gossiped about at holiday gatherings was the very daughter, the very sister they once called useless. Now, as I stood in my office on the eve of the biggest reveal of my life, I thought back to the beginning. The nights coding until sunrise on borrowed laptops. The countless rejections from investors who couldn't see past my youth and gender. The moments I questioned if they were right to throw me away. A soft knock pulled me from my thoughts. "Ms. Adams," Claire said, stepping in. "Everything's set for tomorrow. Full attendance confirmed." I turned from the window. "How many employees in the building now?" "Just over 3,200. Your family's listed in the front center seating for executive staff." I nodded and picked up the only photo on my desk, a snapshot from my college graduation. I looked so young, so hopeful. I had no idea that within months my own family would cast me out. Claire hesitated. "Are you sure you're ready for this?" I placed the photo back down gently. "I'm sure. They need to see. They need to know exactly who they buried, and who rose anyway." Tomorrow wasn't just about my identity. It was about unveiling Titan's newest creation, a revolutionary AI legal platform set to disrupt everything traditional firms relied on. The timing was poetic. The daughter they abandoned had built the future they would now depend on. My phone buzzed. An email from my father, addressed to the department head. Excited to finally meet the mysterious CEO tomorrow, hoping it's someone who truly understands what real success looks like. I smiled to myself, a slow, steady smile. He was about to find out. "I have some suggestions about restructuring the legal department." My father's email had ended. I smiled faintly. He still believed his old-school mindset was the secret to success, still convinced that connections mattered more than innovation. Tomorrow would shatter those illusions. Claire stepped into my office, holding a dark blue folder. "Your speech notes for tomorrow, though honestly, I doubt you'll need them." I took the folder, feeling the weight of 10 years' worth of battles settle into my hands. 10 years, I murmured. 10 years of building Titan Innovations from a dream into a powerhouse. 10 years of my own family working under my roof, catching checks signed by the daughter they discarded, without ever knowing. I turned back toward the skyline, the city alive with 1,000 lights. And I realized this wasn't about revenge anymore. It never really had been. It was about rewriting the definition of success. About proving that it doesn't always come from the polished, predictable favorite. Sometimes, it comes from the outcast, the underestimated one, the so-called failure. "Claire," I called as she reached the door. "Alert security. Tomorrow might get emotional." She nodded, without asking questions. We both knew. Once my family realized who had been pulling the strings all this time, the fallout would be seismic. But I was ready. I hadn't built an empire by running from confrontation. Tomorrow, the daughter they threw away would show them exactly what useless could do. The company auditorium was packed. More than 3,000 employees filled every seat, the atmosphere humming with excitement. For a decade, Titan Innovations' elusive CEO had remained a rumor, a ghost story in corporate circles. Today, that myth would finally take human form. I stood behind a wall of two-way glass in the preparation room, watching the front rows fill. There they were, my father, sitting up straighter than usual, smoothing down his tie, probably rehearsing the advice he planned to graciously offer the CEO. Lydia, primping in her seat, clearly eager to talk about her charity connections. And Ryan, checking his reflection in his phone, hoping the CEO would be his ticket to a real promotion. "Just 2 minutes," Claire whispered, offering me a bottle of water. I took a sip, studying my reflection in the glass. Gone was the 19-year-old girl they'd thrown out into the streets. Standing in her place was a woman in a perfectly tailored navy suit, polished, composed, and undeniably powerful. The COO's voice echoed across the auditorium as he began his introduction. He spoke about Titan's rise, from a shaky startup to a titan, literally, of the tech industry. He spoke of our breakthroughs in AI, our rapid expansion, our disruption of old industries. And finally, he spoke of today's announcement, the launch of our cutting-edge legal AI platform. "And now," he said, smiling toward the wings, "the moment you've all been waiting for. Please welcome Titan Innovations founder and CEO, the visionary behind it all." I stepped forward. The moment had come. I stepped into the spotlight. The massive auditorium fell into stunned silence. Then I heard it, the sharp gasp from Lydia, the strangled, choked sound from my father, the clatter of Ryan's coffee cups smashing against the floor. "Good morning," I said into the microphone, my voice even and clear. "I'm Rachel Adams. Though some of you once knew me by a different name, welcome to Titan Innovations." "Who else is making these charges?" A ripple ran through the room. Murmurs buzzed like electricity as employees, many who had worked alongside me without realizing it, began piecing it all together. The elusive CEO, the architect behind Titan's meteoric rise, had been hidden in plain sight. 7 years ago, I continued, I was told I was worthless, that my passion for technology was foolish, that true success only came from tradition, status, and knowing the right people. I let my eyes sweep across the front row. My father's face had gone paper white. Lydia gripped the sides of her chair so tightly her knuckles were white. Ryan sat frozen, his jaw slack, disbelief etched into every line of his face. The people who dismissed me, I said quietly, have been working under this roof for the past 3 years. I gestured slightly toward them. Recognition sparked across the audience. The legal counsel, the office administrator, the junior compliance officer, all connected by blood, but disconnected by their failure to see me. But this moment isn't about revenge, I continued, letting my voice soften. It's about innovation, about recognizing potential where others see none, about believing in yourself even when no one else does. I clicked a remote in my hand and the giant screens behind me came alive with a sleek demonstration. Today, we're unveiling Titan Lex, our revolutionary AI legal research platform, a system that can process millions of case files, predict litigation outcomes with unprecedented accuracy, and reshape the future of the legal profession. The irony wasn't lost on me, or on my family. The daughter they had cast aside for wasting time with computers had just rewritten the very foundations of their proud traditional careers. The presentation flowed flawlessly. The technology was beyond anything the industry had seen, faster, smarter, transformative. As the final slide faded and I closed my speech, the applause was overwhelming. Employees rose to their feet, cheering not just for Titan Lex, but for the truth finally revealed. Security moved swiftly but discreetly, escorting my family toward my private office upstairs. I stayed behind for a few more minutes, answering questions, feeling the electricity of a new era surging through the room. Then I made my way up. They were waiting when I entered. My father, pacing furiously. Lydia perched stiffly on a chair, unable to meet my gaze. Ryan staring blankly out the window at the Chicago skyline. How? My father finally blurted out. How did I build a multi-billion-dollar company? I finished for him, my voice calm. With the skills you mocked, with the technology you dismissed, and with the determination you tried so hard to destroy. Rachel, Lydia began, her voice trembling slightly, we only wanted what was best for you. I sat down behind my desk, my real desk, not the modest workspace they had seen me use all these years. No, I said calmly, setting the graduation photo down. You wanted what looked best to your friends. There's a difference. Ryan turned from the window, his face pale. At this time, he said, almost in a whisper, you were our boss? Ironic, isn't it? I said, leaning back slightly. The daughter you threw away ended up signing your paychecks. My father straightened stiffly, trying to summon whatever authority he thought he still had. Now listen here, young lady. I held up a hand, cutting him off. You don't get to play the father card now. You forfeited that right the night you gave me 30 minutes to pack my life into a duffel bag. I rose from my chair, smoothing the lapels of my jacket. You're all excellent employees. Your performance reviews are strong. You'll keep your jobs, though I imagine family dinners will feel a little different now. You're letting us stay? Lydia whispered, disbelief clouding her face. Like I said, I replied, steady and sure. This was never about revenge. It's about proving that success doesn't have just one face. Sometimes it comes from the person you least expect. They left my office looking shattered, their decades of quiet superiority stripped away, faced with the undeniable reality. The daughter they had called useless now held their careers in the palm of her hand. The next few months brought changes they hadn't anticipated. My father's restructuring proposals, they gathered dust. Our Titan Lex AI system rendered most of his suggestions obsolete before they even reached my desk. Lydia's prized social connections, the charity boards and golf club contacts, meant nothing here. Titan valued innovation, merit, and resilience, not cocktail party chatter. Brian struggled the most. For the first time, he realized that advancement didn't come from handshakes and name-dropping. It came from results. But something else changed too, something I hadn't expected. Slowly, cautiously, they started to see me, not as the stubborn, disappointing daughter who had refused to walk their carefully laid path, but as someone who had carved her own. Family dinners eventually resumed, but they were different now. As held in my penthouse overlooking the skyline. The conversations shifted, too, less about appearances and more about ideas. Real discussions about innovation, creativity, and what it truly meant to succeed. They learned to listen, to recognize that success didn't always wear a banker's tie or a lawyer's suit. I kept my old workspace down in the engineering wing, where employees now fully aware of who I was, still welcomed me as a peer. It kept me grounded. It reminded me why I built Titan. Not to prove my family wrong, but to prove to myself and to anyone watching that useless was just another word for unlimited. The old graduation photo still sits on my desk, but now it's joined by a new one, taken at last year's company picnic. My family isn't it. Smiling. Genuinely, this time. We're not perfect, but we're learning. And me? I'm exactly where I'm meant to be. Running the empire they once said I would never build. If my story resonated with you, I invite you to share your thoughts below. Your support means more than you know, not just to me, but to everyone out there who has ever been told they weren't enough. Tell me, have you ever been underestimated, doubted, or cast aside? I want to hear your journey, your triumphs, even the battles you're still fighting. Remember, success isn't defined by fitting into someone else's mold. It's defined by the fire you refuse to let burn out, even when the world tries to snuff it. If you're in a place right now where it feels like no one believes in you, let me be the first to say, you are capable of extraordinary things. Keep building, keep dreaming, keep rising, even when it's quiet, especially when it's quiet. Because one day, the people who couldn't see your light will have no choice but to stand in its brilliance. Leave a comment, share your story. And if you're ready, take that first step toward the life they told you was impossible. You're not useless. You're unlimited. And the world hasn't even seen your best yet.